toughest job on the road. Being on the road as a musician is an incredibly difficult thing. But the reality is there are a lot harder positions to be in. Now, I'm not talking about guys out there working in factories 8 hours, 10 hours a day, or working in coal mines or oil rigs or anything like that, and not taking anything away from all the good people out there who work day in and day out to keep this country running. I salute you. But if you're in the topsy-turvy world of live music, of touring, and being out there on the road, it's a tough gig. Depending on who you're playing with and how many dates they do each year, the traveling, whether it's by bus or by plane, and just having to go from place to place to place. And sometimes those schedules and that routing can be crazy, absolutely crazy. But generally, the musicians, generally, once their gig is done, and once if they're a smaller act, once they've capped their gear or gotten their gear loaded off the stage, generally it's the crew who's work all day, all night, and they're not done till the very end. They're the first ones up and the last ones to be done for the day. And even when they're done for the day, hey, we need this, or hey, can you go down, in the bays and get some more water for the band? Is there any more beer in the bay? Their job never seems to end. And you have different positions as far as being a crew member. You've got the monitor guy. And, your group may travel with a monitor console, and that might be a highly skilled position because they have to know how to run. Now, modern day monitoring systems are incredibly advanced. Everything is usually piped through on receivers and in-ear monitors. Gone are the days of wedges. Yes, there are still some bands that have wedges on stage, and but it's a lot easier to travel without wedges. Just have a good transmitting system, receiving system, and a good modern monitor desk. So you've got that monitor guy, and his job may be solely to get that monitoring desk in and out of the venue with help from the local crew. And his job is to set that up and get that going. And then once the show is underway, it's his job to watch that stage, not the audience, but watch that stage, listen to the talkback mics. And now a talkback mic is something that is a huge thing. And, everybody on stage would be wearing in-ear monitors, and there'd be a microphone on stage with a little push button, engage button on the floor. So if something's going on or something's broken or whatever, a member of the band, while they're performing, can step on that, talk into that mic and say, hey, my amp's not working, or hey, I need to hear more vocals in my in-ears, or hey, something's going on, something's wrong, or hey, watch out in the crowd, there's a guy out there, he's starting fights, any number of things, or hey, can the stage manager bring me another beer? All of these kinds of requests and things would go on. Plus, every now and then somebody will get on the talk back and say something humorous and, and crack everybody up. But it's not something that you want to use and abuse too much. It is an important, vital way to communicate, because when there's loud volumes in the club and loud volumes on stage, and we're talking even when I was out on the road with an analog rig with 3 amp heads and a 412 cab, the cabinets were off stage. They were mic'd up, generally sometimes mic'd up with the maybe the top over the head or foam, in front of it to try to keep it from bleeding out into the house. And that monitor guy, it will be listening. The front of the house guy will be listening to that, on stage microphone, and just in case he needs to hear something. Then you've got the front of house engineer, and he may be traveling with his own board, or his job may be to get on the headliner's rig and run that system, or he may be in charge of running the house system at a club or a theater. And that is a highly skilled position again. Most of these guys are all trained to do these jobs, and they are usually paid pretty well. It is expensive to go out with your own monitor and mains, engineers. But, if you've ever played live music, you know how important the sound guy is. It can make or break a band. If you sound bad out front, it doesn't matter how good you're playing on stage. The audience is just not going to be into it. And a bad sound can drive an audience completely out of a venue. So it is very important to have a good monitor engineer and a good mains or out front engineer to run the sound for your band. And most opening acts will do this. Now, a lot of times a guy will do double duty as the tour manager and the front of house engineer. Man, what a high pressure job. If you have to do both of those positions at the same time, man, that is a tough gig, because you're responsible for making it sound good, but then you would be responsible. And I will say this, a tour manager position is a very tough position to fill. It's tough to find a good one. And they have one of the toughest jobs on the road, if not the toughest. And I've worked with all kinds of different tour managers and been in different situations, and some good, some not good, some great at some things, some not so great at others. They are interesting characters. Tour managers tend to be no nonsense, no BS type individuals, and they don't pull punches when doling out their opinions, because it is their job to keep everything in line, keep everything working, manage expectations, manage personalities, manage egos, and in some cases manage their own personalities and egos. And man, I've been on gigs where they just couldn't find a good tour manager, and we've had to deal with guys that were so bad that members of the artist would say, "Hey, as long as this guy is tour manager, your jobs are all safe, because there's nothing you can do to top the mistakes this guy makes every day." So it is, being a tour manager is a very, very tough gig. You are usually the first up and the last to go to bed. You have to make sure everything is handled, whether it's the money, collecting the money after the gig. And if you're dealing with club owners and theaters and stuff like that, it could be you'd be getting paid by check, or sometimes you'd be getting paid by cash if you're dealing with bars. And, dealing with the t-shirt and the merch money. Now, there's another guy that is really important to touring, is having a merch guy. bands are made and broke as far as their money that comes in by how much merch they sell, whether it's CDs, and I believe some bands would probably still sell CDs. People like to have physical copies of music, but t-shirts, hats, koozies, any number of things that these artists sell. And I've seen some recent concerts where they're selling guitars, they're selling all kinds of crazy things, coolers, and all kinds of things. Anything you can think of, sometimes you can see. And man, if you're dealing with a headlining act, man, you could be dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars each night. Some of it in cash, and some of it, would be obviously now with swiping and credit cards and all that. Some of it wouldn't be cash. But imagine having to deal with all that. Getting the merch guy to count out everything at the end of the night. How did we do? Writing the numbers out. A tour manager's job is never done. A crew member's job is never done. You never know when those guys will get pulled out of their sleep or out of their rack and told, hey man, we've got this issue. The bus is broken down, or there's a roadblock, or there's severe weather ahead, any number of things. Those guys, I salute road crews. Man, I always try to, keep a good relationship with the crew. They make or break you as far as being out on the road. And then, the merch guy, he makes or breaks an act if he handles the money right, if he doesn't screw up the figures, the totals. The other thing, with the tour manager is he may be dealing with large sums of cash. And that can be a precarious situation. It's not unusual for tour managers to have some way to protect themselves. It could be a knife. It could be something else. I won't get into that, but don't think that these guys aren't prepared for precarious situations. And there have been cases where buses have been robbed and people have been robbed on the road. And tour managers know this, and they are there to try and prevent that. A lot of times, guys in a position like that are ex-military. It takes almost a sarge or a captain or a lieutenant, somebody that is used to creating order and keeping things in line. Oftentimes, guys in those positions come from those type of backgrounds. Now, the other position that is very important on the road, probably the most important, is your driver. You want a driver who is smooth, who is able to stay on the road, a driver who can hold his movements, for hours. Because if you've got a driver that's got to go pee every hour, you're never going to make it to your destination. A lot of times the routing between two gigs, it could be 400, 500 miles to the next gig. And man, those guys have it tough. It is often heard that these, drivers will pass away on the road, or drivers will, have short careers and get off the road and not live long after. Man, they have got a really tough gig. They have got to be able to drive all night, and the bus will probably, could leave the venue at midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning. And that bus driver's got to drive all night in the dark, through snow, through rain, through sleet, through wind, through any number of things. Meanwhile, they've got to drive while the band may be whooping it up and celebrating in the back, cranking up the tunes, drinking the beers, acting like Jack Knuckles. And, they got to put up with a lot, and they are also, whether it's the tour manager or the bus driver, A lot of times they're kind of like a security guard. If the bus driver is there and somebody's, the party is raging after the gig and the bus driver's getting ready and getting his map and getting his travel log and everything together, there could be idiots trying to get on the bus and party with the band. There could be issues with, a member of the opposite sex who is on the bus and creating drama. It could be any number of things, and this tour manager and the bus driver will have to step up and say, okay, hey guys, you off the bus, you off the bus, let's go. And they're literally like barking out orders. And dealing with people who may be inebriated, you could be dealing with band members that are inebriated. I've been very, very lucky to be out on the road and had some great bus drivers, just really cool guys, dependable, reliable. But man, that is a high turnover type business, because one mistake, one bad night, you get a little rough around the edges, and they'll just decide, oh, we want somebody else. And I've heard stories. I've heard this one bus driver told me about this pretty famous late 90s artist. And I think it was probably somewhere in the mid 2000s, 2006. This artist was pretty big. And the whole night they would hear this sound and then a clank, and then a sound and a clank. And they get to the venue, and this driver was just a temporary driver, just a fill-in driver. Hey, we need a fill-in driver this week. And so this was a female driver, and the driver went back and saw the artist, and I think they were pretty much just driving the artist. And he said, can I ask you a question? And the artist said, oh, sure. What do you want to know? Well, last night I kept hearing this sound, and then this clank all night long. What was going on? I don't understand. And the artist said, yes, well, I'm really paranoid about having things on the bus that could get me in trouble. And so what the artist showed, those little metal canisters, those little gas canisters that you would use for like whipped cream type things, or you would go to a head shop and they used to sell those little gas canisters. It's like a bullet size, canister. And he said, yeah, well, I'm really paranoid about having anything illegal on the bus. So I'm doing these whippets. So all night long, the artist was just sitting there in the front lounge, emptying canisters and then dropping the canisters into this bag where he would toss them out the next day. So you've got to deal with some crazy, crazy stuff. If you're a bus driver, you got to deal with, crossing state lines. If you're deep in Texas, you got to deal with the Border Patrol. You've got to deal with a lot of crazy individuals if you're a tour manager. And man, I could talk on this subject for a half hour to an hour of how tough those guys have it. And if you're a headliner on a big stadium tour, man, those crew guys got it even tougher, man. They got to get up early in the morning, and they've got to assemble that stage and that lighting rig and raise those trusses and, raise the PA up and test all that stuff. And man, those guys get up at the crack of dawn. And then after the show is over at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, they've got to tear all that stuff down. And it takes 2 or 3 hours. So they may be getting on the bus, at 3 a.m. if they're lucky, and rolling to the next town and then getting up at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock the next morning or 8 o'clock the next morning after maybe 5 hours sleep and doing it all over again. Now, I know those guys have to be on tours like that, those big, gigantic tours. They have to be making bank because that is a brutal lifestyle. That is a brutal job, a very dangerous job, handling all that heavy stuff, pulling stuff, getting up on light rigs, all of that. It's an incredibly difficult job. And man, I salute all crew members, road managers, bus drivers, the guys that make the show happen. Man, I salute you.